But there are problems. For instance, when I get to the address, you'll notice in here that I've got 45 St Mary's Road, Ealing, then a funny character in Ealing. Well, the funny character is is showing that this is a multi-value record. So entering data in here is not a very good idea. And the other reason why it's not a very good idea is if you've got some clever stuff going on behind the scenes, so when I add this particular bit of data, it updates something else, then you could be circumventing that. So whilst you can add things in here, my personal recommendation is don't. But again, when you have your formal training, just talk to the application developers and they'll tell you when it's a good idea to and when it's not. So I'm just going to close out of there, and I'm not going to bother saving that on this occasion. The next menu option is the database menu, and on here we have the option to save our database. Very straightforward. All it's going to really do is to update the database image. I tend to do that from time to time. It just refreshes everything up. Don't need to do that now, so I'm just going to click no. The second option on here is user management. Now this is where you can create your users, and you can also set the permissions. So for instance, what I can do in here is I'll set myself up as a user, so put my name in, click add, and I'm added to the list. And within here, what I can then do is I can go and set a password, or I can set no password if I want to. The access level, so whether I'm a user, administrator, or system administrator. I like to be dangerous, so I'll select system administrator. And also we can set for the user to change the password at next logon, or never expire the password, or have the password expire on a certain date. So for the moment, I've just put in something generic there because I'm a system administrator, and the next time that Martin logs in, I'll leave him to reset a password that is unique to him. Once we're done, we can just update. So that's a nice way of maintaining these. Now, if you've got a high turnover of staff, for instance, what you might want to do is have the passwords to expire, once a month or something. It can get a little bit annoying for users having to keep dream up passwords, but it does mean that passwords that maybe don't need to be in the system will obviously expire. So let's just close out of there. And the next option off the database is the environment settings. Now there are a fair number of environment settings, so I'm going to leave this till last, not least because we'll be changing some of them and then dropping into the Forms Designer to see how things have changed. By that time you'll probably have finished a drink and be ready to follow along with your clinic application, so I'll come to that a little bit later. The next option is language. Now language is two options under there. You've got language settings. If I just click on that one, then this is the screen where you can create or modify the OpenInsight language configurations. There are 5 languages that ship with OpenInsight: English, French, German, Italian and Spanish. And there is also Greek, Polish and Yiddish, but you can quite easily go in here and just add your own if you need to by putting the identifier for the language, but more importantly the corresponding NCS code. I'm not going to add any in there, so we'll just go cancel. And the second option is the form language configuration window. Now in here what I can do is I can pick a form, so we'll just pick our patient entry form, and for every control on the form, including labels, there will be the English. Now this is the text that we've put in. However, if I'm going to be building an international application that's going to be used in France or Germany, then what I can do is I can put in the French translation for patient entry, the German word for patient entry, etc. Now there are good reasons why this isn't pre-populated, and I won't go into those now, but this does give you full control to put in whatever you want. However, one thing to bear in mind, particularly if you're working in German here, be careful that your labels are big enough in your application. Very often the form will look fine in English, but once you actually start translating these into German, the words are much longer in a lot of cases, and you can find that your form will very quickly look untidy. So you need to configure this and then go through each of your forms and make sure that they make sense. You've also got the same option for menu text. So the MP patient entry is our form, and I've got the menu and file new. So we've got our English, and then we could put the French, the German, etc. in there as well. And obviously we could then test run that and have a look. I'm not going to do that, so I'm just going to close and come out of there. Search basically gives you the option to find a table, very straightforward. So if I was to put in here patient and OK, that's going to go away and it will find my my table for me. And I can obviously do find next to find another one. Okay, I've only got one, so I'm only going to find one there. So if you've got a lot of tables in your application, then this can be very useful. Also, if you don't prefix your entities like I do with the MP to bring them all together, that can be a nice way of finding an entity that's lost somewhere within this list. Under the utilities option, we've got the ability to create indexes. Now, an index is a separate table that provides access to information in much the same way that an index does in a book. The index contains a list of the data values in a column, for example, all the company names in a table. Next to each of the data values is the key for the row that contains that particular value. So taking our book index as an example, the key is the page number or numbers where the required information appears in the book. Indexes are not necessarily required for OpenInsight data tables because linear hash tables maintain a key for each of the rows. OpenInsight uses the key to go directly to the row in the table. However, an index provides an alternative method for locating rows in the table, and you can add indexes as a secondary method for locating and sorting data from the tables. Our application data tables are very small. However, in the real world, tables can become very large with millions and millions of rows of data. Searching for and retrieving records based on an ID can therefore be a little slow, and indexes provide a much more efficient search method. Now, OpenInsight gives you the ability to add 4 key index types: B-tree, bitmap, cross-reference and relational. You also have the ability to remove and update. Now, I'm not going to get into indexing at this point because it's a big subject, and it's one that I'll leave for the professional developers to cover in the training. However, you can choose list index tables, and that will give you a list of all of the tables that are indexed within your application. I haven't added any to our patient entry record yet, but you can see here that MP3 library has got 3 B-tree indexes on it, no other indexes. And the sysrepos locks has 1 B-tree, no cross-reference and relational. And you can go into here and you can get some more detail about that particular index as well. So on the MP3 library, the column has got a B-tree index on album, artist and title, for instance. So this is where you can manage your indexes. Again, off the utilities menu, we've got the ability to manage our OpenInsight tables. So I can have a look at the linear hash table information. So again, this is the MP patient, and I can see information about our particular table, and I can compress the table if I want to and save the settings. I can also run an LH verify, which will verify all of the tables, the chosen table, and provide information about those test results. And I can also go in and fix any group format errors that might show up from the LH verify. And again, I'll leave the professionals to go through that particular part of the product with you. Other MV tables, we support Universe and Unidata, and from 9.2 we also support TigerLogix D3, and this provides you with tools to set up connections and convert dictionaries and bits and pieces like that. Out of the scope of this particular tutorial, if you're working with Universe or Unidata or want to use OpenInsight against those databases, or in fact D3, then there will be other tutorials, or contact your Revelation representative and they'll be happy to go through those in more detail with you. In addition, there is also the ability to use OpenInsight against SQL tables, so Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, different SQL databases. And it's very much a case of going through the connection wizard, the dataset wizard, etc. And I'll be covering this in a post 9.2 release video as well.